thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out, because I know time is valuable. That's one thing that we can't get back is time. So anytime we have somebody to come on and chat with us, I value their time. So thank you so much for joining us. And I think this is a really good topic to talk about. We get a lot of DMs talking about, they understand that mental health is important, but how to do it, how to take a break, and how does that supposed to look or whatever. So I think it's just a really good topic to kind of dive into. But before we start talking about it, let people know who you are, what you do, where you're located, and how they can find you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I totally agree. This is a really great topic to talk about. I feel like it's a very necessary conversation. Yeah. So my name is Kei. I am on all platforms. I am a licensed professional counselor associate. So I just started as a therapist in Houston, Texas. You can find me at lifewithkeirose.com, and I am Life with Kei Rose on all platforms.
Awesome. Do you have what's your specialty? Like, have you found your niche? Like, this is what I'm going to do? What is it?
Yeah, so right now it's depression, anxiety, childhood trauma, life adjustments, grief, stress, self-esteem issues, relationship issues, and self-abandonment.
Oh, I love it. All those are good topics.
Very good topics. A lot of people deal with that.
For sure. I have a lot of clients that come and talk about those exact topics. So, but okay, let's get into it. So the topic is, what should I do on my day off to improve my mental health, right? So, I feel like there's so many avenues that we can go down out there, right? Having a day off and all those things. But let's start with talking about why it's important to take a mental health break.
Yeah. So I think, it's important to take a break before life makes you take a break. When we don't make the time to relax, rest, and just have our mind just not do anything, we suffer consequences. At any given point, there are 1,000,001 things going on in our head, because we are so many people to so many different people and other places. And so I think, it's hard to juggle all of that. And I think sometimes we just need to take a step away and just make that time for ourselves. Taking care of yourself is the way so that you can work in a way that's optimal for you instead of working against you. A lot of us feel, even when we feel resistance, we keep going because it's like work. And that gets really exhausting and it takes a toll. I know that, for me, I know one of the symptoms can be like brain fog or confusion and things like that. And I know as soon as I start feeling that way, then I need to step away. So your symptoms might look different, but I think if you start to pay attention to what's going on in your body, then that will be a reminder for you to take a break. How that break can look can be totally different for everybody, but I think it's just important in general as a way to take care of yourself.
Yeah. What about the individuals that have a hard time taking a break, whether it's at work, right? Because maybe I am a top employee at work and I want to keep that good name. So taking a break may make me look like I'm lacking and I don't want to take a break, or maybe I'm not a good employee and I'm like, I don't want to take a break because then I already feel like I'm stuck. So, I don't want to take more time off where it makes me feel like I'm lazy, or I'm a new mom, or I'm a mom and I feel guilty for taking a break because my kids need me. Or, it's so many, avenues and so many reasons that people feel guilty or feel like they take a break. How can one address those internal thoughts of feeling that guilt of taking a break?
Yeah. Oof. Like you said, when we first started, there's so many avenues that we can go down. But I will say the first thing is to just be aware, right? Be aware of that guilt. And, of course, we tend to associate guilt with negativity, but it is okay to feel guilty. I think most of the time when we feel guilty, we're like, how do we get rid of this? I need to get rid of this right now because I don't want to feel this way. Because guilt doesn't feel good, right? But sometimes we have to sit in that guilt and really just say, you know what? I do feel guilty. And this is not necessarily a reflection of me as a person. It's just a reflection of what I'm going through at this moment. And those are two different things. So I think definitely this first step is awareness of just being like, I feel guilty. and I'm having a really hard time with taking a break. I think sometimes it can be hard for people to say those exact words out loud, to say I'm struggling with taking a break.
Yeah. So do you think that's what they should just start with, of saying, I'm guilty, I feel guilty?
I think being honest with yourself will definitely help you move in that direction of being able to take a break without feeling guilty. It could be like easy. I'm just like, take a break, right? And it sounds good, but in somebody else's head, they're like, well, no, I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. So I think there's a couple reasons for this. And like I said, it'll be different for everybody, but I think, we have to deconstruct our relationship with work and with being busy and being productive. Productivity, can be used as a measure for success. And so I think, a lot of us associate rest with not being productive, because it's like, well, if I'm not moving around, what am I doing? What is my purpose if I'm not helping somebody, if I'm not being something for somebody? What am I here for, right? So that's one way. I also think, tying into that, especially as Black women, we tend to take on a lot. We tend to play the superwoman role, right? And we're taking on so much. We're not really delegating. We're not really asking for help. And so at some point, you will have to take a break, because one person can't handle it all. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how many, whatever you think you may be able to do, you'll have to take a break eventually. And so I think, with the superwoman mindset, it's just like, well, if I don't do it, who will?
Right.
And so we kind of take on other things that aren't really even our responsibility to take on sometimes. But we have that nagging feeling that says, if I don't do it, then nothing else will go right. And I know that it feels like that's the truth, but there are other alternatives, right? And I think, if you struggle with people pleasing, that can also be a mindset that you may experience, of just like, I have to be the one to help. I have to be the one to help, or someone may not like me, right? Because we were talking about jobs, like, oh, my coworkers might look at me differently if I'm not helping, or they might look at me differently if I take a break. And so also, that perception, other people's perception, plays a role into our decision to rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, where do you think that comes from? Because we have that a lot. I mean, especially in the Black community, playing that superwoman's role. Like, where does it come from? And then how can we start kind of even deconstructing that narrative that we've had for so long?
Yeah. I definitely think it comes from generations, for sure. Our grandparents, they worked so hard. They worked so hard to get to where they were and where they are. And, then our parents saw that, right? And then associated, like, work so hard, just work your butt off, and then you're going to get to that level of success, or you're going to get the house, or you're going to get the job, or whatever the case may be. And, a lot of our parents don't really slow down because of that mindset that we always have to be busy, we always have to be moving. And then that gets, passed down to the next generation, right? And so I think breaking the cycle is so, so important. But before we break the cycle, we have to acknowledge that it is not helpful. It's actually very harmful for us to constantly be working all the time, right? So we have to call it out for what it is before we even do any deconstructing. Another thing that I feel like goes into it, of course, is capitalism, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious. Capitalism, it sends us the message that we have to work all the time. And if we're not working, then again, what is our purpose? And so deconstructing our relationship with capitalism, I know that can tend to be a very layered conversation, and it very much is. But I think deconstructing our relationship with capitalism and with productivity is something that it takes a while. It does. But I think it's necessary. And as you deconstruct your relationship with capitalism, I definitely encourage you to have patience. It's definitely not something that happens overnight. A lot of things can come up as you're deconstructing, whether it's with your family, whether it's been, personal experience, whether it's trauma. A lot of things may come up as you're deconstructing of why you may view rest in a negative light. Sometimes it can tie to worthiness. Sometimes it can tie to guilt, self-esteem, a lot of anxiety, right? A lot of the unknown. And I think from what I've heard and, the people that I've talked to about rest, even myself, I've had this experience as well. If you work 40 hours a week, every week, and you even work on the weekends, whether it's, your personal things or you're just kind of moving around, if you have one day where you're not doing anything, that's going to feel so weird because you're always working. Mm-hmm. And so when you finally take that moment to slow down, you're like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Like, what does this feels so weird, right? And the other thing is that when we're always moving, we don't really have time to tap in with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so when it's peace and quiet around and it's no distractions, then you have that opportunity to tap in with yourself and check in and see how you feel. But again, it's uncomfortable because it's not something that happens often. It's almost like it may feel like a threat because it's not something that you normally experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had several clients and even friends that were, one of my friends, her parents, like you said, they value work.
Yeah.
So she was like, I feel worthless when I take a break. So it's like I can't take a break.
Yeah.
Because when I'm working, it makes me feel like I'm worthy.
Yeah, and that's a really tough one too, because that tends to go back into childhood, right? Especially with how our parents reacted when we did something that was based on work. Like if you were only celebrated with an accomplishment, then you associate that with, well, I'm only going to be loved when I'm doing something, and I'm not worthy of being just loved just because I exist, right? And so really deconstructing that and starting to realize that these experiences that I've had, they are my truth, but they don't necessarily reflect the truth. Having that distinction is really important. As I mentioned before, when I was in grad school, oh man, I was doing a million and one things. I look back and I'm like, girl, who did you think you were? Seriously. Because I was in school as a full-time student. I had a hair business. I was a content creator. I was doing hair as a hairstylist.
Wow.
All at the same time. Taking 4 classes a semester, all at the same time. I look back like, girl, oh my goodness. But I knew I was in survival mode then. Because, when you're in survival mode, you don't have time to slow down. You don't have time. But even when my body was telling me, I would ignore it. And I'd be like, no, but I have to wake up and I have to do this right now, right? Because we feel a sense of urgency of work. Even if we're oh, there's so much to look forward to. Let's say you're going out with your girls, y'all going to happy hour on Friday, but it's just in the back of your head, it's just something gnawing at you, well, got to do something, got to get this checklist. And one thing that I will, what I think may be helpful, especially if you are a person that writes to-do lists every day, or you just kind of sit, as you start your morning and evaluate what you're doing that day, ask yourself, are you writing this because you need to do it or want to do it? Or are you writing this because you feel like you should? Those shoulds, whew, I don't really like the word should because it implies, things of just there's a lack, right? But that's one thing, in my personal journey that I started to realize, I was writing 10 things a day, girl, 10 things a day? Oh, in what world are you going to be able to do that? And so once I started doing, it's the small things like that, because, this is such a big topic. And it does take a lot of mental energy to deconstruct. But if you can do small things and notice, small ways that you that seem very simple, like a to-do list, But then you realize, well, how am I actually constructing this to-do list? And what am I saying to myself if I don't complete it? Am I giving myself grace, or am I punishing myself because I haven't completed this?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that, because you're right. We get caught up in those shoulds and what we think based on what society has told us generations before, and we don't meet that status quo, then we internalize that we are less. So I think that's something really good. Now, okay, let's say we get to the point of, listen, you don't have to keep talking about taking a break, because I'm good. I'll take a break quickly. Okay.
Yeah.
But what should I be doing during this time when it comes to like pouring back into yourself or whatever? How or what should people be doing during these breaks to improve themselves, their mental health?
So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can take a break. If you do tend to have a busy schedule, one thing I would recommend is time blocking. Most of us use Google Calendar, some type of calendar format. So, try to time block every week. What seems to be helpful for some clients that I've worked with is to have a consistent time, right? So let's say every Friday at 5 p.m., you're going to go get a massage, right? And this is every Friday. Having those almost non-negotiables for yourself can be really easy. It can really make the process easier to stick with, because every Friday at 5 p.m. you are going to do something for yourself for 1 hour. I also think that when we talk about mental health breaks, we tend to think it's an all-day thing. And it can be, but it doesn't have to be, right? I don't want people to feel like, oh, well, I don't have a whole day, so that means I can't take a break. No, that's not what we're saying, right? You can still take a break, even if it's 30 minutes, even if it's 5 minutes. That matters. Just simply taking that break matters. And so I think, too, when you are getting ready to take that break, check in with yourself. See how you feel. How does your body feel? Is it tight? Is it tense? Or is it a little bit more relaxed? How does your brain feel? Do you feel a little bit foggy? Do you feel, energized, but still a little drained? Checking in with your body and your mind will really help you figure out what it is that you need in that moment, right? So if you're feeling drained, maybe you need a nap. If you're feeling a little bit okay, mentally, but physically, maybe you might do some yoga to release some of that stress. Or maybe you might go for a run or work out. Maybe you might just sit on the couch and do nothing, right? Because that is a break too. That is a very valid break.
One of my breaks, okay? Yeah. Nothing.
Period. I love those days because it just feels good to do nothing. But I think, again, it is hard for people to do nothing. And so if you are just starting your journey in deconstructing your relationship with productivity, one thing I would recommend is to gear towards activities instead of the do nothing route, because I think the do nothing route is a lot easier when you have already when you're on the end of the deconstructing process. Right. But when you're first starting, you can feel guilty for doing nothing. And so I would recommend doing some type of activity, like I said, yoga, or, having a self-care night, or whatever they might be. Some of my favorite things is Netflix. I know it's so common, but I really do enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I think, as you're thinking about how to take a break, what are the things that you enjoy? Yeah. Because I can tell you all these things. I can tell you to journal. I can tell you to do yoga. But what resonates with you? That is more important than anything. Yeah. To what actually resonates with you, because as long as it resonates with you, that's how you fill your cup. Doing something that you're not going to enjoy, or you don't like, may not necessarily fill your cup, because you're almost doing it out of obligation and not enjoyment, right? And so I think finding those activities that you like and that you resonate is important as you take your mental health break.
Yeah. I love that. And you're right. It's almost like if you don't have the buy-in of whatever that is, you're just going to be doing it out of obligation.
Yeah.
So finding things that you like. But the bad thing is, what if you like to work? You find pleasure in working.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do, right? Despite, everything, I mean, it's different, right? Because work in general is work. work is work. But there are people that do have jobs that they genuinely love. And I think that's great, but it's still work at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Nothing can change the fact that it's work. You know what I mean? Even if it's super enjoyable, like me as a content creator, I love creating content, but I would be lying to y'all if I said it wasn't work.
Yeah.
Now, do I enjoy doing it? Absolutely, but it's still work at the end of the day, right? And so even I need to take a break from that. And I think, you know, especially when you're very passionate about something, you kind of want to do it so much. But even people need break from their passions. Think about like artists, right? Artists are not out here making songs every day. Yeah. They're putting out an album, they're working hard on that, and then they're kind of stepping away. Like, let me refill my cup so I can come back and make a better project, right? Let's think about Beyonce. Okay. Sis was in the cut for a little bit, but then she came out with a really amazing project. Right. And I think being able to fill your cup again, unless your cup is full, it's really hard to serve. And so for people that don't feel worthy when they're not helping, I want you to remember that you still have to fill your cup. And if your cup isn't full, you can't help anybody. So if it's really like drinking coffee, right? Like if you got this little bit of coffee left, that ain't really gonna do much for you. But if you got a full cup of coffee, you're energized, you're ready to go. You're like, all right, let's get it. But, you know, we cannot pour from an empty cup. So if you struggle with, you know, associating, not helping at the moment with, you know, low self-worth, I just want you to remember that, because you really do have to take care of yourself to even help anybody, including yourself. And you know, you helping yourself is you helping other people.
Yeah. Now, if you get to that point of, okay, I want to take a self-care break or day or whatever, and those are just more than the weekends, right? Because you can still take a day on a Monday or Tuesday, or you can take a couple days, however that looks. What to tell people if they don't know what to say to their employer to have a growth day?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. I feel like, because, you know, there's so many different environments. Like the corporate world is way different than, like, you know, but I do think that the way you approach it definitely depends on the relationship that you have with whoever needs to know about you taking a break. But I do think regardless, you know, honesty is best, right? I am unable to give my all at this job at this moment because I myself am not fulfilled. My needs, you know, I need to take care of my needs in order to take care of the needs that you have for me. And so me taking care of myself is a way to actually pour back into the business or the company, because, you know, when I'm in a better place, I work better, I can deliver quicker, I can, you know, do more, I can, you know, do things like that. And so I think, you know, being honest for sure. I know that, you know, depending on the environment, it might be frowned on upon, but I do think, you know, it is important to honor your body and honor your needs. I will say, you know, a couple friends that I have, I know the tech industry, they're more like lenient, I think. They create that space for their employees to where taking a break is encouraged, but other industries might not be as accepting. But I think regardless of where we are in society about, you know, society's view on taking a break, like I said, honoring yourself, and being honest, I think that is really important. And, you know, regardless of their reaction, you'll be able to say, I honored myself by saying that this is what I need at this moment. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Because you can also, look, while you were talking about that, I was like, and you can also just be like, look, I need a break. Here's my time of leave slip.
That too, right? Listen, use up that PTO.
Okay.
Use it up, every ounce. Every ounce. Listen, I don't have PTO, but if I did, I would use up every single day of it, because I mean, you don't get a reward for overworking yourself.
Exactly. You
You
don't.
don't.
And then if something happens to you, they're just going to replace you. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, you're so irreplaceable. No. So
Nope.
whatever happened, but is what it is, and they're going to move right on. So like you said,
Yep.
when I was in the workforce, I definitely used up my PTO. I mean, I would leave just a little bit, just in case, maybe like 8 hours, but everything else milked it. Like,
yeah. And I'm here for that, because you really do need to take a break. And like you said, if something were to happen to you, like they would really replace you. Boom. Right. It's done. It's done already. Like they probably got a list already somewhere of just like, oh, this is people you might reach out to, like, should anything happen, God forbid. But I think, you know, again, just really prioritizing yourself, especially as Black women. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. Yeah. I've heard so many stories of Black women, you know, having heart attacks so young, suffering physical conditions, you know, at a very young age because of stress, especially work stress. And when you are, especially when you're in a very high stress environment, if you have a high stress job, self-care is your friend. It's not your enemy. Right. Sometimes we view self-care as a chore, right? Like, I gotta take care of myself tonight, as if it's like dishes. But it's like, I want people to realize that if you take care of yourself, you get to do so much more in life. You get to navigate in a better way. You don't have to be tired and exhausted and drained every single day. What if life can be different than what it is now? Like, it is possible for all of us, but we do have to realize that prioritizing ourselves is so important, whether that be through therapy, whether that be through mental health breaks, time off, whatever the case may be. It is super, super important for everybody.
Absolutely. And like you said, not only do you see a different mentally, you'll see a different physically. You'll feel better. You'll feel more energized and ready to take on the day. You do pour into yourself and you pour into your cup.
Listen, I totally agree. I remember when I was in my second year of grad school and I was working at this restaurant. Girl, why I was working at a restaurant, I can't tell you. But I was getting ready to study abroad for Paris, and I really needed to like get the money for it. So I started working at this restaurant, whatever. I studied abroad, came back, and I'm still working at this restaurant. And I'm like, why am I still working at this place? But the hours were so draining. And every day I would wake up, completely exhausted. I would wake up that way.
Wow.
It is a horrible feeling to go to sleep and wake up extremely exhausted and then have to go into work, right? But I think, again, I didn't have to do anything. Like, because keep in mind, like, I'm in grad school, like, I have school to focus on, like, I had so many things to focus on, but I was telling myself that I still needed to work, especially at this place. And I think, you know, for me personally, it was because I needed to prove something. I needed to prove that I was valuable to this employer, even though I didn't want to be there. Yeah. So I had to unpack with myself about what that was about and why I felt the need to overwork myself to prove my value. And I think sometimes when we do have those, when we do feel that way, that shows up in so many different places. Like, it might show up in work, but it can show up in relationships, can show up in friendships. It can show up in so many different places of your life. And so me unpacking that was so important for me to be able to deconstruct my relationship with capitalism.
Yeah. Now, do you think that if people struggle with taking a break or being okay with breaking, should they go to a therapist to talk to see like why they're struggling? Would you recommend someone go to therapy if they're struggling?
Absolutely. I think it could be very helpful. As we've discussed, you know, everyone has their reason for why they feel guilty or why they may struggle with taking a break. But I do think being able to talk to someone about it will be a relief. One, because, you know, you'll be able to have a safe space to just be honest. And sometimes it can feel a little bit intimidating to say that out loud, whether it be to yourself, to friends, to family. because you might be afraid of judgment, especially if you are, from a generation that works so much. You might have some different experiences as far as, speaking your truth. And you're like, well, I feel a lot different than everyone else around me. So who do I talk to? And so that's where a therapist can be super helpful. But I think in general, even if you have talked to, your family and friends about what you might be experiencing, a therapist can definitely help you take the time to really just unpack those beliefs and see where they stem from, and just kind of see how you can move forward and create new narratives about what work can look like for you instead of what you feel like work should look like for you.
Yeah, I love that. I think this is a really good conversation. Very much so needed.
Yeah.
Kind of get people to start thinking about how they do life. Like, what am I doing? Because, we get so caught up in the day-to-day, and honest, social media could be twofold, right? It can be very helpful, right? It can get the message across. We can connect with people, but then it also can be hard and daunting for people when you see, like, well, if I rest, this person that I follow on social media, he, she, whatever, they are doing all these things. They're not resting, and look at their life. So I don't, we get in that comparison trap.
Yep.
So many things. And I think this topic is a really good topic to talk about, and just have people to kind of sit back and self-reflect, like, hey, this is actually something I need to do.
Yeah. I agree.
So what I like to do at this part is just want to throw out some questions to kind of get to know you a little bit more, like, and the audience to kind of get to know you a little bit more. So I'm just going to ask you a couple questions, and you can just answer them. So what's your favorite social media platform?
I would say TikTok for sure.
Okay. What's your favorite comfort food?
My favorite comfort food. I think pizza.
Okay. Pizza. Okay, anyway. Okay, so what's one show that you binge watch that you love? Like, you would say everybody that one.
Oh my goodness. I have so many. I'm like a professional binge watcher. I binge watch so many shows, but this is so hard. If I had to pick one show, I think the show that I've binged the most is Grey's Anatomy. Yeah, I've watched that, like, the season from like start to finish like 3 times. And there's like 20 seasons at this point. The most recent show that I've binge watched was, let's see, what was the most recent? There's been like so many new shows that have come out recently.
Yeah.
Trying to think what was like the most. So I'm into I love like Game of Thrones, right?
Okay.
I didn't love how the season ended, but there's like a new sequel or whatever. But there was another show very similar to that called Vikings, and I binge watched that and I loved it. So if you like that genre, then maybe that's a show that you might explore. But it's very addicting. So I warned you.
Okay, ideal vacation spot.
Anywhere with a beach. Anywhere with a beach. But the place that I want to go to the most right now is Costa Rica. Yeah, I want my honeymoon. Yeah, I'm single, but I want my honeymoon to be in Turks and Caicos.
You got to put it out there, girl. Put it out there. Yes.
Listen. Or Bora Bora. Those are like my 2 locations. No, I'm going to say Bora Bora is number 1. Or Turks and Caicos. Yeah. But anywhere with the beach. I'm a water sign. I'm a Cancer. So I love being around water. The beach is like one of my most favorite places to be. So if it has a beach, that's a good vacation spot for me.
Yeah. Bora Bora is definitely on my list as well. Like, I have got to get there.
Yes.
What do your favorite thing to do for self-care? When you take a mental health break, what's your favorite thing? Your one favorite thing to do, like you, absolute must for you.
Nothing. That's my favorite. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's nothing like really just sitting on the couch and just like literally getting my little throw blanket and just chilling. Like chilling is underrated.
It really is.
It is so underrated as a form of self-care. Like really just to be able to chill. You don't even gotta put on music. You don't even gotta turn on Netflix. Like literally just chilling in your own energy. Top tier feeling for sure.
What if one thing that you can tell people, what's one takeaway that you would leave with people who are watching this episode, and it's talking about the importance of mental health? What's one thing you'll tell them?
One thing. You asking all the hard questions today. You just want me to pick. Like you just like one. And of course I like to talk so much. So I'm like, no, girl, I can't pick one. That's what my head is saying. But one thing, okay.
Like if they can't take anything from this, you want one like, hey, take this out of this because it's super important for you to remember this.
Yeah. So if I had to say one thing to anyone watching this episode right now, it would be to prioritize yourself just as much as you prioritize other people and your job.
Yeah. I love it.
You are worthy of being prioritized. And I think as you continue to go on your mental health journey, just remember that, the love and the care that you give to yourself is going to only help you show up better. It's not to punish you. It's not to, take time away from any other things that you may be doing. It's really for you. Like it is not an enemy. Self-care isn't an enemy. And taking a break is, so productive. Rest is productive. So please find the time to rest, or life will find the time for you.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So remind people before we go who you are, how they can find you, what you do, where you're located.
Yes, so absolutely. So my name's Keionna Rose. I am a therapist and content creator located in Houston, Texas. You can find me on all platforms, Life of Keionna Rose. And my website is www.lifewithkeirose.com. And I have a blog on there. I have a newsletter. So if you enjoy getting something sent to your inbox that fill your cup, feel free to sign up for my newsletter. Promise is nothing but great content. It's a bi-weekly newsletter. So 2 times a month, you get to hear from me. And my main focus in that newsletter is to fill your cup in some shape or form. And you'll be able to take something really great away from it. So definitely sign up for my newsletter. And then you can just connect with me on my website. I have a contact form on there if you're interested in receiving therapy from me or becoming a client. Feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.